The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and thanks for joining today's webinar looking at how application delivery has developed to meet the key security and IT challenges of 2017. My name is Shona Bradshaw. I'm the Marketing Manager for Bytes Security Partnerships, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Dale Fairbrother, one of the Senior Technical Engineers at our partner F5 Networks. Just a little bit of intro to what we're going to do today. Let's have an agenda for today's session. I'll cover a little bit of housekeeping, introduce Bytes. I will keep it brief, as many of you know us already, and then introduce Dale and the F5 team. Dale will be taking you through today some of the key challenges, some of the key game-changing things that are happening in the application delivery landscape, before talking around how F5's new application delivery platform, the ISeries platform, and their Herculon suite can actually aid in meeting some of these challenges. Lastly, we'll be doing an interactive Q&A at the end. So if there's any questions, got any technical questions, anything on any of the anything you've seen during the webinar, please do post them via the questions and chat box, and I'll post those to Dale at the end. So, as I said, a little bit of housekeeping for today's session. Attendee lines will be on mute throughout the presentation, but we do really welcome questions via the chat or the questions box throughout, and we'll address them all and answer those all at the end of the session. We will keep discussions to strategy and solutions. We won't be discussing commercials or different products on this session, though of course those conversations are welcome via your Bytes account manager afterwards. We are recording today's session, so you'll be able to review that at your leisure and share that insight with your team. And lastly, we do have a feedback survey at the end just to make sure that these sessions are hitting the mark and covering the right type of content for you. So please do take the time to fill that in. So a little bit who we are, who are Bytes. So Bytes Security Partnerships are independent specialist security reseller within the Bytes Allied Electronics group. And what that means is we aim to offer the agility and personal approach of a very small independent reseller and marry that up with the resources of a larger group, and access to resources, vendor relationships, etc. The stability that you'd want from a large company. Bytes really stand, what we stand on is our level of technical expertise and knowledge. We have first-line direct-to-engineer support and consultancy on all of the different technologies that we work with, and that allows us to enjoy and offer top-tier vendor partnerships, which means that we can deliver strong commercial value to our customers on those technologies as well. So where do we work? Well, we really work across the whole spectrum of information security, from next generation firewalling, DDoS prevention, attack prevention, through to application security and application delivery, which is what we're discussing with you today. Within all of those areas, what we offer to customers is the technical knowledge and delivery around technologies. We start at the start of the spectrum, offering in-house scoping, planning, project development, security strategy development, technology mapping, through to aiding in terms of installation and maintenance of technology, and lastly, post-installation, our customer care and package with direct-to-engineer support, and also then technology reviews and account reviews going forward. So why are we here today? Why are we talking to customers about how application delivery has changed? The market landscape is very different to, say, 4 or 5 years ago. A few drivers of note are leading to this. There's an increased flexibility and increased options in access methods to applications. So, increasingly customers are finding their expectations of their workforce is that they'll be able to access applications from anywhere on any device, and that leads to a set of challenges. Cloud itself is bringing a vast amount of opportunities for customers, for businesses to be more efficient and drive their businesses forward, but it does come with security challenges, connection challenges, and that's why we work with F5 to help resolve those for customers. Increasingly, customers are not finding that they have one cloud infrastructure. They may be using multiple clouds, they may be shadow IT within their organization, they may be part on-premise, spinning up different types of clouds using both Azure and Amazon for different applications. And there is a need for businesses to be able to manage that in an efficient secure manner. Lastly, a really key important topic at the moment is the rise of SSL. So over 50% of web traffic is now encrypted, and that brings new challenges when looking at applications. How can you ensure that they're still secure when you can't see the actual traffic going in and out of them? The good news is application delivery has evolved to meet these challenges, and that's what Dale's going to be sharing with you today, how some of these challenges can actually be taken on head-on with your existing F5 infrastructure. So what are our objectives today? Obviously, we want to share the latest technologies from F5 as a customer update. We want to explore how the newest technologies from F5 map to that current security landscape. And lastly, and most importantly, Bytes want to ensure businesses are fully maximising their investment and are aware of everything that their F5 technology can actually achieve. So with that in mind, all that it remains for me to do is to introduce Dale. He's a Senior Security Engineer at F5 Network. We've been a Silver Technology Partner of Bytes for over 5 years now, and as such offer a full technical services and support suite around F5. F5 themselves are a long-standing global Gartner market leader in application delivery and really pioneering next-generation application delivery. And that's what I'm going to hand over to Dale to chat to you a little bit further about today. So I'll just briefly make Dale your presenter for today, and I will pop back on to ask him some of your key questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you, Shona. Hopefully you can see my correct screen now.
I can't see what
magic. Fantastic. So, yeah, thank you very much. So as Shona said, my name's Dale Fowler. I work here at F5 as one of our systems engineer folks on the channel, and as such I work very closely with Bytes in making sure we can take our messages forward and making sure we can understand how Bytes can add value, not just on an F5 solution, but how it integrates with other services and other things that you as customers need to deliver and optimize within your organization. So Shona's covered sort of many at the point so far, and I'm just going to go over some of those things about what those mean to F5 and how we're going to take our systems onwards as we move through that environment. So as you can see, we've just released our latest range of platforms, our Big IP ISeries, and our ISeries is designed to be the world's most programmable cloud-ready ADC. It has DevOps-like agility with the scale and security depth and investment protection needed for both established and emerging apps. Now, someone in our marketing department has worked very hard on those statements, so it's definitely worth me keeping them into the presentation. But what it means is we've created a new series of hardware to maximize the delivery of our own software functionalities to deliver those services that you require in the changing application landscape. So if we look at what that landscape looks like today, Shona mentioned many of these points. She talked about the growth and the adoption of people moving to cloud, and that's organizations like all of you that are either looking at moving to public cloud to offer your services, moving to sort of a private cloud environment where you want more agility and scalability within your own infrastructure, and just the way you're starting to consume those applications and consume those services. So we see in many reports around the world about 82% of organizations are looking at this kind of hybrid cloud approach, where you don't want to put all your eggs in one particular cloud basket. You want to sort of put different workloads in different environments. You want some of your own resources to deliver some applications, and you want to consume applications out of the cloud, either as a service or manage them within the public cloud environment. And the adoption rate for this is ever increasing, and the spend into this space is growing massively. And the leader in this space, obviously, were people like AWS, and now Microsoft with Azure are getting rapid sort of growth in how people are adopting their services. Shona also talked about the importance of SSL traffic. Now, my favorite thing about SSL traffic is the variety of statistics that you'll see about how much SSL there is in the world today. And the reason for these different statistics, even within my own presentation, is it's all about how you're going to calculate what really is that SSL traffic. Do you talk about it as the number of websites that are currently HTTPS versus HTTP websites? That's maybe how someone like Google might calculate it. You know, out of all the websites they search through, which ones are HTTPS, which ones are only HTTP. So that gives you a particular figure, and that figure has now reached over 50%. Or you could look at, well, what about the number of hits to that website that's SSL versus non-SSL? So if I'm using smaller devices but secure connections to websites, I'm going to generate much more traffic into that space, much more hits to those secure websites than I would do maybe to the more informational-based websites. So again, you'll get different statistics based on those figures. And the third way to calculate it is more to do with the load that travels across that SSL tunnel. So if you take someone like Netflix that now delivers 4K videos, but they also switched to SSL connections over the last few years. So now you're getting 4K video streaming over an SSL connection. So the total bandwidth and workload in that is massive compared to the previous elements of stream. So that's where you may get figures up to like 70 or 80% of SSL. So you will see this massive sort of swing and variety in what these statistics are, but they're all talking about, well, how are you measuring what that impact of the SSL would be, and whether, you know, you're talking volume or number of connections to that application or service. And obviously, many of the security devices out there have this kind of blind spot for how SSL traffic is sort of delivered. So attackers and hackers will use this now to maliciously infect machines and services. So we need to make sure that we don't allow this attack vector into our environments. We talked again about things like the emerging IT architectures, so different ways to consume services. Whether you're talking about delivering services in containers and microservices where you're going to deliver it from the cloud, whether you're going to pass management of that to your DevOps team and the different business units about consuming the way IT is used. So it's a different and varying landscape. We need to make sure we can handle services in and deliver our application services to each of these people. We also then have the continued traffic growth and the demand that's being driven through things like the Internet of Things or IoT. And this could be the individual load of that device, the number of connected devices, but it could just be the way that more devices talk to each other and we share information. Whether that sharing of information is something like social media that's using it, IoT type protocols to do chat and share content and video, or whether we're talking about the number of IP cameras or smartphones or wearable tech that people have on them today. Now there's a new numbering scheme that's just that's come out from different sort of reports where we're now talking about a zettabyte of data or zettabytes of throughput. And this, I had to look this up. This is where you get beyond the petabyte, you know, way beyond terabytes and exabytes and petabytes, and you get to now zettabytes, which is 1 million petabytes of data and volume. And they reckon this, you know, it's going to be up to 2.3 zettabytes of data traveling around the internet by 2020. So we need to make sure we can handle this workload, and these devices connecting to your sites and services and your applications, we need to make sure that no connections are dropped, no user experience is sort of depreciated by the number of devices trying to connect to that service. Within this kind of environment and based on these demands of the changing traffic, we need to be aware that people want to deliver different types of services in different ways throughout their environment. There's the demands of cloud to get my applications running and scalable and agile. There's the need for DevOps to spin up new applications and services in a much quicker, much more agile and dynamic way. We also have the demands coming out of infrastructure from things like software-defined networking and how to run orchestration and automation within that network infrastructure to make it as consumable and scalable as possible. And as we all work in this mobile world now, as we all work as remote workers, we have multiple devices connecting to multiple applications all of the time, even without us being really aware of what's going on. The amount of applications that my iPhone is currently talking to when I'm not even using it, it's a scary number. If you start to analyze the traffic that's being generated from that device to do queries to different media feeds, to to find information about traffic and commute and weather and apps and email and social media feeds. You know, it's an astounding amount of data that's going to and from between this device, and I'm not even touching it. I'm not even using it and consuming it. So we need to make sure that all these things can be delivered as well and as sort of optimized as possible within the framework. So it used to be relatively easy for F5 to deliver services into this space. You take your set of users, they come in and connect over the internet through one of our big IP appliances, and we deliver our services as that single strategic point of control out to those different applications within your data centers. Now, however, it's a much more diverse and distributed landscape we need to provide services to. Your customers and users are in different locations. They're using different methods of communication into the environment, and the locations that your applications reside now can be distributed across a broad range of those different platforms. So in order for us to be able to still be that strategic point of control, we need to make sure we can be delivered in many different environments and consumed by you as a customer in many different ways. So we've introduced things like our Silverline as a service model. We can now function down into the container level, and obviously in the hardware and platform space, we're talking heavily about the new ISeries. We want to make sure that we can deliver any of these services into those locations that you need them to be, whether it's a virtual workload or a hardware-based workload. And we need to make sure that not just can we provide services to those applications where they reside, but we can provide those services as those applications need to move. So if you want to move from your traditional environment out to the cloud or move from one cloud to another, how can we continue to provide services into that space? So we're going to do it all through our big IP ISeries. And the reason we're going to do it is because it is market leading in its performance, its capabilities, and the functionality it's going to provide. Now, I don't personally like this slide, but someone obviously worked really hard on putting all these different facts and figures together about what we're first to the market in, what we can provide over other vendors and services. But what it really kind of means is that we've delivered the latest sort of next generation of platform out for you to consume as customers. So if we look at the iSeries range that's available, we can consider the older platforms that they're replacing with the iSeries, and we had this different range of platforms from the 2000 through to the 10,000. And what we've done really cleverly is we've added an I in front of all of the numbers. So we now have a migration from what was our 4,000 platform to our i4000. But what you will see is that each of these new appliances are now all only a single U. They all have much more power and functionality into them. But we're also looking at driving the cost of ownership down, you know, the carbon footprint, the power they consume, the space and the cooling they require. So we're making sure it's affordable for you going forward from an operational point of view. Each of the appliances in the iSeries range can leverage what we call our pay-as-you-grow model. So each piece of hardware will come in a standard performance option around the i600 version, and then you can buy an on-demand license when you require more performance, and that hardware can be upgraded to the i2800 or 7800 version. So this means there's a lower price point for you to buy an iSeries and get it into your estate delivering your applications, but as the need for that traffic or the need for the number of applications increases, you can buy an on-demand license to get that performance out of the hardware to increase its life cycle and the amount of use you will get out of the appliances going forward. So now if we look at some of the technical details about the appliances themselves, we can see that we've worked really hard to increase the performance capabilities across all statistics and metrics that you're going to need to measure those boxes. We provide roughly 2 times the layer 4 throughput in any of the product ranges and around 1.5 times the layer 7 connectivity through those environments. Every box has more memory. It has something that's kind of like our FPGA magic I'm going to talk about in a minute. And they're focused on enhancing the way SSL can be delivered. To make sure these devices are all future-proofed, we provided them all with 10 gig ports even in the low end of boxes, you can get 10 gig SFP ports to connect into your data center and services. And in the higher end appliances, we're going to have 40 gig quad SFP ports in every one of those boxes. And the future will be to move to 100 gig as well. So we're ready in the data center. We want to consume less cables, take up less space, make it more cost effective to run. And we've also given all the hardware a touch screen. There used to be 4 buttons next to the screen, but now instead of the 4 buttons being next to the screen, the 4 buttons are on the screen. It's the future right there within our own hardware. So I mentioned a minute ago that we talked about our FPGA magic. Well, that's how I like to think about it. But what it is we've introduced a new functionality called TurboFlex, a way to take our iSeries appliances and maximize the performance they deliver to your particular use case. So how do I explain what this means in a simple and straightforward way? So the use case I like to talk about, and to try and explain this to someone who's maybe not technical and not in the IT space, is to look at the world from a security point of view. Now, when we talk about any kind of security appliance or security framework, we can look at it from a positive versus negative point of view. Do I want to allow only good things? Do I want to block only bad things? So when I try and explain this in a non-IT way, I talk about this guy, the bouncer, the doorman, someone that's going to protect my nightclub, my environment, my venue. And I can, as the sort of venue owner, I can task my doorman to work in either a positive way or a negative way. If I ask him to apply a negative security policy, I'll ask him to keep out the drunk people. I'll ask him to keep out the riffraff, the troublemakers, keep out anything that's going to potentially cause trouble. Or alternatively, I could put him in a positive stance and say, right, here's a list of the people I want to allow into my club. Here's the list of who should and shouldn't come into this environment. I only want people to come into my concert that have tickets for my environment. A positive framework to that model. And at any time, I can change what this rule base is, and I can change his stance. So if we relate this back to the IT world, we could look at him, the doorman, as a facilitator to do these tasks as a piece of hardware called an FPGA, a field programmable gate array. I task the FPGA with a particular job, but at any time, because he's field programmable, I can change his rule base. I can now say, don't allow people in with trainers on, don't allow people in with jeans on, or I can change who should and shouldn't come into the environment. So he's field programmable in a way to deliver that task to save me, the club or venue owner, having to do that workload to myself. And he's adaptable in this framework, but he can continue to only do that job. Once he is a doorman, he is always a doorman. So wouldn't it be cool if we could say, right, well, today I don't need him to act like that. Today I need him to be this guy. I need him to be an air traffic controller. I need him to direct aeroplanes around the airport, or control as they land and where they go and where they park and who should disembark. So I could look at this from a sort of traffic optimization point of view. How do I get the right users to the right application, to the right location, the right service? And I could offload this workload to him as an FPGA. Alternatively, the next day, I might want to make him this guy, give him a completely different workload, a more complex decision-making model, someone that's going to be able to tell the difference between right and wrong. Is that interaction coming from a human or is it coming from a bot? How can he determine the difference between those different environments? Now, all these tasks could be given to an FPGA, but as I said, once an FPGA is defined into a role, that's all he can do. So what we've introduced with TurboFlex is the ability to change the role that FPGA can do. So you have the choice within your hardware of what you want to make that FPGA do. What stance and workload do you want him in today? And you can change this as the demands of your applications and services need that hardware to be optimized. It was called a few things. We talked about FPGA personas, but eventually when it came to the market, we talked about it as TurboFlex. What it means from a provisioning point of view is where you would provision our normal modules within the F5 appliances. You can now in the iSeries go in and select a piece of firmware that you want to apply to the FPGA and give it that individual workload. And that's being called and tagged as software-defined hardware. So if you hear us talking about we're the only software-defined hardware vendor, this is what we're referring to, an ability for you as the customer to choose how your appliance optimizes and delivers traffic based on the changing demands and the growth of your applications and services. So now let's have a look at sort of what this is going to deliver to you. What does the iSeries really deliver to you, the customer? So it's aimed to deliver three key elements. Firstly, we want to make sure it's very easy to deploy and stand up a private cloud environment. So if you're hosting your own applications within your own data centers and estates and you want to move them to be more agile and scalable, we want to make sure our ADC can deliver that. At the same time, we want to be able to handle the increased workload and demand that's being given to us by security services and the SSL encryption within data flows. So we want to make sure all of our appliances can maximize the way this is delivered. And at the same time, we all want to do it for a lower total cost of ownership, reduce the cost of management and owning F5 appliances and reduce the cost of delivering those application services. So if we first take a look at the private cloud, you can very sort of simply sum up how we're going to make sure we can deliver into this space. We have our broad range of deployment models, the iSeries being the latest way we can deploy those services into your estate. We've always had this diverse range of orchestration and programmable tools with our extensible REST API to integrate with other services and systems. We can then deliver any application-centric services across our fabric, whether that's for availability, whether it's for performance, whether it's for protection and security of those applications. And we give you two choices then about how you integrate this in or create your private cloud. Do you want all of the management being done through an F5 flavored environment, where we have our Big IQ centralized manager product that can work as a single point of control for all the Big IP appliances across your estate? Or do you already have a centralized orchestration and software-defined data center framework and orchestration tool, and you simply want F5 to integrate into that piece? So for that, we can provide something called our iWorkflow, and it acts as a gateway between the software systems and orchestration tools that you already have today, but provides the F5 interaction and configuration through templates and catalogs of services into this framework. So if you want to use all the existing tools you have today, we can integrate, or if you don't have a tool and you wish to have an F5 flavored tool, we can provide you that through our Big IQ system. But we talk heavily about private cloud because it is a piece of hardware after all, our iSeries. So how can the iSeries appliance help me leverage the public cloud? How does a cloud-ready ADC help with the applications I've already got in the public cloud? Well, we've introduced an additional new piece of technology and functionality into each of the iSeries appliances. It's something we're calling our application connector. Now, I could spend a whole hour just talking about the application connector and its functionality. But the key thing that it's worth raising here in the iSeries presentation is that all of the iSeries have this functionality built in and ready to go. They also include licenses for delivering this within the iSeries appliance as well. So this is something you can start to leverage and start to work on just by purchasing one of our iSeries appliances. And what it means is it allows you to stand up a sort of split model about how F5 services are delivered, but give you that central point of strategic control into the space. If you want to start consuming applications within the public cloud environment like Azure and AWS and Google, then you need a way to provide services into those. Do you do it in a distributed way where you put individual appliances and ADCs and other security appliances into each of those environments, or do you consume that as a service from those locations? It's a difficult decision to make and a difficult environment to manage. But it is likely that some of your applications today, if you're using any colo environment or hosted environments, those applications already reside in the same locations where these public clouds exist. These public clouds exist in the real world. They're in the data centers in the UK, they're in the data centers all over EMEA. So if you can put your services into that same location and provide really fast, high-performance links from that service provider into those cloud environments, you can maximize the way that is delivered. But you still need to configure the flow, the understanding of how services are applied. So with our ISeries, you can stand up what we're calling a service center in the middle of one of those colo type environments. And then within each of the cloud environments, you can spin up what we call our application connector proxy. And it will run in a small container. It will scan into the public cloud, and it will look at all the available applications that you have. And your development team or your application team can then go into the AC end, and they can tick off all the applications that they wish to provide services to. Then the big IT administrator can look at it from the service center end, and he can start to configure the F5 services to interact with those applications as pool members. So this controls all traffic flow through that single point of entry. This reduces the need for any of your applications in the public cloud to have a public IP address or any internet connectivity. You provide all connectivity through secure tunnels from our AC to our service center within that environment. We've also thrown in a really interactive and fancy GUI into this environment. So you can say, right, how do my applications currently appear? Where do they reside? So, well, they reside in these different cloud environments. Some are green, some are red. They connect to these particular application connector endpoints. So I know that if I want to take an application from Azure and move it to AWS or vice versa, I'm going to see that move on this environment, and I'm going to still continue to provide consistent application services through the F5 ISeries appliance to those applications wherever they reside. So this is an exciting new deployment model F5 are moving down, and you're going to get to leverage that by using and moving to the new ISeries appliance. So the next element we're going to cover and talk about now is about providing that security, that data protection in transit around SSL and handling that SSL workload. We've talked already about the growth of SSL traffic. Here the figure is 64% of encrypted traffic. We could talk about the stress that SSL causes for appliances. As people move to more complicated keys, as there are more breaches and vulnerabilities discovered in particular ciphers within SSL, we need to move to the latest generation of TLS and the encryption frameworks and the complexity of the calculations that we need to deliver. But managing it in this distributed sort of application landscape can be challenging about how you put, where do you put your keys, who manages it, how do you know when they expire, where should you host them. So with our ISeries, we're going to fix all of these problems. And we're the first ADC to really provide high-end elliptic curve cryptography in hardware in all of the platform range. So elliptic curve cryptography, or ECC, is a more secure way of delivering an SSL key exchange. Typically, within SSL, we talk about RSA for the generation of cryptography. And RSA typically uses randomly generated prime numbers. It's just the length of those prime numbers needs to become longer and longer all the time. You know, whether we're talking about 1K keys, 2K keys, 4K keys, we're talking about the length of complexity of those random numbers. Alternatively, a different way to generate those random numbers is to use an elliptic curve graph, an elliptic curve cryptography framework. We can get much simpler, shorter, smaller numbers, but they're more complicated to randomly generate. So we get much more security in a lower number, smaller amount of calculation. But there's a different workload, there's a different type of mathematics that the hardware has to be able to handle and create. So if you want to talk about moving to elliptic curve cryptography, and you're being driven to do that for something like perfect forward secrecy, F5 and our ISeries appliance is the market leader in the way we can deliver these services. One of the ways that customers are also starting to leverage this new inbuilt technology is through something we're calling our hybrid crypto offload. So if you want to scale your environment out across multiple F5 virtual machines, there is still a limitation to how much a piece of software can do SSL decryption. So what we've introduced is a way to offload that SSL decryption from our virtual edition to our ISeries hardware. It's called hybrid crypto offload. So this is where where customers of ours are having challenges with how they scale across the virtual world, how they scale out things like public cloud and virtual machines, and how they handle that increase of SSL within that virtual environment. So we're allowing you to offload that workload to an ISeries appliance through this unique technology as well. It's provided in our ISeries. The final thing we're going to cover within the ISeries framework is about the lower cost of ownership, how we're going to make it cost effective for you guys to leverage these appliances. So the first type of legacy, or the first type of consolidation we can talk about is about taking our legacy appliances and moving them to iSeries. So if your estate today had a broad range of F5 appliances that are on long-term support still, but the support costs generally increases every year about how you would sort of manage that environment, you could take the workload of all of those appliances and you could migrate them to one of our single boxes, one of our new i10,000s. So in this scenario, they're talking about taking 9 of our previous boxes, moving them to one single box. This new box is going to do massively more performance, 3 million layer 7 requests per second versus the 400,000 that the older boxes could do combined. But it's mainly looking at this size of box for taking those workloads as individual elements within our virtualization technology of VCMP and giving them an individual guest to deliver those appliances. But this is going to give you a massive cost saving over 5 years, but the reality is it's going to pay for itself over 2 years just in the OpEx cost itself. So rather than paying for the support for all those legacy boxes you have today, move to a new appliance and you'll get your money back within around 2 years. The next type of consolidation and reducing costs we can talk about is around that critical data protection. And we're going to talk about a statistic, a metric that's important. We're going to talk about ECC SSL. The general purpose ADCs out there on the market today, one of our competitors, what they would typically do in the ADC space, it would take around 6 of their high-end platforms to provide the same number of ECC handshakes that we can provide in a single big IP appliance. So the total cost saving over the 3 years within that framework is almost $1 million. And these prices are all taken at our list price, or our list price versus that other vendor list price as well. I'm not naming who that vendor is, but it's someone that we compete with very heavily in the hardware ADC space. But we're taking a particular metric that means something to you, the customer, about how that ECC SSL decryption can be handled, and providing a cost per handshake model onto that, where we become a very cost-effective way to deliver SSL and TLS communication. Alternatively, we could look at a different vendor we're competing with, someone that claims to be a specialist SSL-based ADC, and they would require up to maybe 12 of their hardware appliances to deliver the same number of elliptic curve SSL transactions per second that we can provide within our single box. So this is going to save you almost $2 million on that workload, on that cost. That's a key element you need to think about. It's not just about how expensive an individual piece of hardware is, it's how expensive it is for that metric that's important to me, the consumer. The other way to consider our consolidation is look at the broad range of services that F5 can provide within our single framework. So if you want to take a DNS and GSLB workload from Infoblox, you want to take inbound data center class firewalling from someone like a Checkpoint, you want to put DDoS mitigation on there, access control, web application firewalling, anti-fraud. We can do all this in a single box with a single vendor, a single support contract. So the figures are stated here. If we talk about a HA pair of boxes, and again we're talking dollar list price, as these different appliances, these different frameworks, and you want to consolidate that onto a single pair of F5 Big IP iSeries, you're going to save yourself hundreds of thousands of pounds per year on that purchase, on that solution, and simplify the way it's managed and controlled and delivered to all of your applications. So that's the key elements of how the ISeries is going to add value to you, add value to how your infrastructure can work as a private cloud, how we can maximize the way we deliver SSL, all for a lower total cost of ownership. So they talk about this. They talk about why do we need to do that. They talk about why do you need a cloud-ready ADC. So on the left, we talk about how a traditional ADC is limited in the way that it can deliver services. It's limited in the way that it can scale. Its focus is maybe only a point solution in one area. Our cloud-ready ADC is ready for and ahead of the curve with how we handle technology communication. We're already providing services as the first proxy to deliver the MQTT protocol for the Internet of Things. We're the first ones to deliver Node.js functionality for advanced scripting and orchestration. And we want to make sure that all of our functionality and services can be delivered in a software-defined way. So this is why you need to consider the F5 ISeries appliance. And within that appliance, it can deliver all of the F5 services. It can deliver our SSL inspection. It can deliver our kind of user-side services around identity and access management and controlling which users go where to what services. And then it can also provide our broad range of application services, how we provide DDoS mitigation, how we provide DNS-based services and security, web application firewalling, and even our online fraud mitigation services, all delivered through single appliances in an agile and cloud-like way. Now, Shona also mentioned that we talked briefly about our Herculon appliances. So as well as introducing new hardware throughout our range, we've also wanted to packagize the way we deliver certain F5 services into a more streamlined sort of purpose-built framework. So we've introduced a Herculon appliance range that leverages the ISeries technologies, that changes the way that you interact with and use and administer and configure the F5 appliances. So the first Herculon appliance out to the market is the DDoS Hybrid Defender, and it's talking about taking all the functionality that we can provide across the F5 portfolio for DDoS mitigation, and rather than having you configure that as all independent elements across a broad range of our modules and profiles, taking that, simplifying the interface, giving you a single appliance to deliver both all layers of DDoS mitigation in market leading. Whether you need network protection for volumetric-based attacks, whether you need application-based protection from DDoS mitigation, someone trying to take down your environment at the layer 7 model, trying to take down your service through bots and interaction and misuse of your website, or whether it's someone trying to just saturate the bandwidth and control. The DDoS Hybrid Defender uniquely communicates with our Silverline DDoS scrubbing service in the cloud and can provide information, share information, block different attack vectors as and when needed through this dynamic scale of and agility between the two devices. As well as the Herculon Hybrid Defender, we've introduced a Herculon SSL Orchestrator. So this is to handle the changes and demands of that SSL workload and the way SSL traffic needs to be inspected and controlled. In all of the ISeries, we talk about inbound SSL decryption through elliptic curve cryptography. In this use case for the Herculon, our customers are coming to us and saying, well, actually, I've got an outbound use case. I've got all these different security appliances within my environment, and I want them to inspect the traffic going from my users out to the internet, out to their applications they're consuming. Whether they're going to a Facebook or a Google, or whether they're consuming Office 365, how do I get in that SSL path, and how do I inspect that traditional blind spot that I see today that my other security appliances are unable to view and unable to get into that space? So we've designed a product that's purposely going to sit there, decrypt traffic, pass it out to your other security appliances within the data center, and then we have the traffic sent back to us, re-encrypt it before it goes out to those applications out across the internet and in the cloud. And this appliance already has deployment guides and integration with other hardware vendors. So things like Palo Altos and firewalls and ClearSwifts, FireEye and Checkpoint from Bytes' point of view as well, like how to make sure you can leverage all those technologies in one go by integrating these services together. We want to provide visibility into the SSL traffic to the other security appliances that already exist in your environment, and we need to do it in a very dynamic, context-aware way. We don't just want to decrypt everything for everyone. We want to decrypt it specifically based on who the user is, where the traffic's going, and send it. Take that information, take that context, and send it to the security devices that you wish it to go to. So for certain types of traffic, for my user going to Office 365, maybe I only want to send it past my next-gen firewall. But for a contractor going out to Facebook, maybe I need to send it past my data leakage system to make sure they're not sending any data out that they shouldn't do and leaving my environment. So different security holes that may be discovered based on the context of user and traffic flow. We have a simplified interface for how you're going to be able to configure that, define who your clients are, define what the servers they're going to connect to, and that servers is everything on the, everything outside of my environment. Every application, every internet site, however I want to provide connectivity, and then choose how do I hand off communication to these different players. Some of those different security appliances need to receive traffic in different ways. Some need to see it in line, some need to see it as an ICAP handoff, and some, like system incident management systems, just need to receive a notification of what that traffic was. So our appliance will deliver this as and how those different services need to connect. And we can apply maximum levels of SSL cipher control at that communication end. So you can't be breached into your clients through things like Freak and Poodle and Beast, these SSL renegotiation attacks that can target client machines. We can make sure we can secure that for all of your environment and services. And we've overrun a little bit from where I wanted to be at the moment, but on this point we'll take a pause. I'll invite Shona to come back on and ask any questions that you may have. Shona?
Yes, so I don't have any questions at the moment come through. If people can drop them across just over the next minute or so, then I'll be more than happy to pass them on to Dale and let him answer them at this point. So I don't think you have any questions at this point, Dale. You seem to have covered off a wide variety of topics here.
It did the Herculon stuff. I forgot we were talked about putting that in actually, so I just sort of threw that in as a live update to the presentation. I think that it's great to sort of see and understand that both Bytes see all the same challenges that we see within the customer framework. Talks about the ever increasing numbers of SSL traffic and how we can deliver that to our organisations. One of the key things for me at F5 is being able to leverage the skill set within Bytes to talk about how our appliance, how our services can be integrated with those other security vendors to provide what the customers truly need. We are not narrow-minded, but we see the world from an F5 point of view, whereas Bytes will see the world from the customer's point of view, from the security landscape point of view, and have a lot of interaction with both their pre-sales, post-sales, and even their CTO at Bytes to understand how they need to drive their customers forward. What are they being challenged with by their customers about the adoption of cloud, about the adoption of security services into that framework, and knowing that they're this real safe pair of hands to deliver not only an F5 solution, but an F5 solution that integrates with things like Office 365, with other authentication and multi-factor auth systems. We know they're going to help you drive the maximum value out of your F5 services and those other vendors as well. So it's great to see these challenges come in, and it's great to work with Bytes on making sure we can provide you those the services that you need.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other slides, or have we reached the end of your presentation?
I only have, my nice wrap up. Thanks everyone for attending. I have a new tagline slide. We talked about many things in even my sort of short career or my 4-year career with F5. We're now talking about we make apps go faster, smarter, safer. There's a whole load of new branding out there. There's new, go to our YouTube channel, look at all of our conversations. It's all about the app, the application. We make apps go. When people ask me, what do you do for a living? What do F5 do? This is the simplest way to sum it up. If you've got any mobile phone, any application, you can see them on that phone, on that tablet, even on your laptop. We're somewhere in the mix to powering that application, somewhere in the mix to powering that service that you consume, whether it's through the mobile network you're connecting to get there, the internet provider you're connecting to, or the endpoint that you're actually trying to consume information or services from. F5 is likely to be in that mix somewhere. And as the demand for those applications increases, we want to make sure we're relevant to all of the consumption models, all of the deployment models. So yeah, we make apps go. That's the new F5 mantra.
Excellent, good to know. Well, all that remains for me to do is to thank Dale very much for his time and taking us through today's webinar. Thank those people who have attended today's session and listened in, because I do appreciate taking time out your busy schedule to your webinar. Is a bit of an ask at times with everything going on in the marketplace. Thank you all for attending, and please do take a short 2 seconds after you finish the webinar to fill in the feedback survey. Thank you very much, everyone.